check out our streaming schedule for this week. We've got tons of content in terms of the NFL and college football, as we're going live just about every single day this week. So make sure you hit that notification bell so you don't miss a single moment where we go live. And now, on with our feature presentation.
We've known for a while now that the NFL has trumped the NBA in terms of popularity. I don't think that's a secret to anyone. LeBron James can say all he wants about how Christmas is the NBA's day, not the NFL's. But the ratings say otherwise, seeing as the NBA had 5 competitive games on over-the-air television, and the NFL had 2 super ugly blowouts on a paywalled service. And the NFL got 10 times the viewership. And it isn't just about the ratings, or the television coverage, or anything along those lines, even though the coverage is at a point where the NBA refused to air games against Thursday Night Football and completely overhauled its television package to not go up against one of the flagship football time slots. It's also about when the games are scheduled. Ever notice that you don't see NBA games going up against the Super Bowl, and that any game that takes place that Sunday is done more than 3 hours before kickoff? There's a reason for that. There is nothing in the collective bargaining agreement that says anything about NBA games not being allowed to be held on Thanksgiving. It says it right here in Article 20, Section 6, that there are no exceptions to the NBA on Thanksgiving. And yet, the NBA won't schedule any games on Thanksgiving. There's a reason for that. Heck, this year, there's only one game on Conference Championship Sunday, as in January 26, 2025. And that's a game between the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Portland Trail Blazers, as in 2 markets that do not have NFL teams. Once again, there's a reason for that. When it comes to scheduling, the NBA knows better than to mess with the NFL. And speaking of football history, if you want to learn more about the history of the NFL and the history of football, then this is the place for you, because we talk about all things NFL all the time with a new video and a new live stream every single day. And we're streaming every game this postseason. So if you like that sort of stuff, then be sure to hit that like button down below, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss a single video that we post on the channel. Thanks in advance for your support as we try and hit 70,000 subscribers. And I bring all that up because if you want to know how big the NFL is compared to the NBA, let me tell you the story about the time that the NBA rescheduled a game because it was going up against the NFL and they had no idea about it. Imagine one sporting league deciding to play a game at an ungodly hour specifically because there was no way whatsoever that it would work going up against an NFL game. Yet, in 1985, with the game you've been watching this entire time, that's exactly what happened. And seeing as it's wildcard weekend in the NFL, and this involves a wildcard game, we're going to break it down 40 years later. Because this is the story behind the controversy with the New Jersey Nets, the National Football League, and what resulted in one of the latest start times to a game in NBA history as a result. Before I talk about the actual incident in question, we need some context to understand what the original game plan was for the 2 leagues, and how they were supposed to live in harmony with no issues whatsoever. Back in 1985, you had 5 teams in each conference make it to the playoffs in the NFL. You had 3 division winners advance to the divisional round automatically, and you had 2 wildcards duke it out on wildcard weekend, with those 2 wildcard games taking place on a Sunday. In this case, wildcard weekend will consist of the AFC and the NFC games being played back-to-back on Sunday, December 29th. And with football not on the docket for that Saturday, outside of some collegiate bowl games, the NBA had a game on their hands on December 28th between the New Jersey Nets and the Washington Bullets, scheduled at Brendan Byrne Arena in the Meadowlands complex, with a game scheduled for 7:30. Seems to be pretty straightforward so far, right? Well, things were about to get a heck of a lot messier when the season played out in the NFL, and by the end of it, the teams hosting the wildcard round included the New York Giants in the NFC, and the team we've been watching this whole time, the New York Jets, in the AFC. The Giants, by virtue of finishing the season with a 10-6 record, were unable to win the NFC East over the Dallas Cowboys, who owned the tiebreaker. But they were able to get a wild card and have the right to host the 10-6 San Francisco 49ers in the wild card game, with the Giants not only making the playoffs for the second straight season, but with the team hosting a playoff game for the first time since 1962, when they hosted the NFL Championship at Yankee Stadium against the Green Bay Packers. This was the first time the Giants had hosted a playoff game at Giants Stadium since moving across the Hudson. And on the flip side, over in the AFC, the New York Jets finished at 11-5, and they got the number 4 seed in the conference, earning the right to host the 11-5 New England Patriots in the wildcard game that you've been watching this entire time. For the Jets, this was their first time in the playoffs since 1982, and was just their second playoff game hosted since the merger, with the first one coming in 1981 when the team played at Shea Stadium, in a game that you can learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner. This meant that the 1985 wildcard round consisted of 2 playoff games, with both games being held at Giants Stadium. And obviously, that posed a massive problem for the NFL, because some plans were going to have to be changed. The original plan of having a game on Sunday at 12:30 Eastern and a game on Sunday at 4 o'clock Eastern would have to be altered, seeing as it would be impossible to play the games at their scheduled times. You can't play a game at 12:30 and then have the stadium clear out and have everyone re-enter and have the teams warm up and have the second game at 4 o'clock. It would be a massive strain on everyone involved, and it would just be logistically impossible to pull off. You'd have to play the 2 games on 2 different days. And this meant that one of the games, as in the game we've been watching this whole time, the Jets-Patriots game, would have to move to Saturday, with that game being played at 4 o'clock, while the Giants-49ers game will be played on Sunday at 1 o'clock. Now, you might be asking why this Jets-Patriots game, as in the game we've been watching this whole time, wasn't moved to Saturday at 12:30 or 1 o'clock instead. Why 4 o'clock? Wouldn't that make it easier on all parties involved if it was moved to the afternoon? There'd be more time to do a changeover from a Jets game to a Giants game. There'd be more time for NBC, which had the rights to televise the AFC game, to get out and allow CBS to come in and get everything set up themselves. And there'd be fewer conflicts with other events taking place that night in the region. Well, there's 2 issues. Number 1, NBC had a commitment to televise the Florida Citrus Bowl, which was a battle between number 17 ranked Ohio State and number 9 ranked BYU, in a game that the Buckeyes won 10-7. That game was at 1 o'clock Eastern, so if the playoff game was at 1 o'clock too, good luck figuring out how to do that for obvious reasons. And number 2, even if that game wasn't taking place at all and NBC had a free 3 hours, television ratings dictate everything. And the later the game takes place, the better the ratings are, due to the West Coast audience being more inclined to tune in. A 4 o'clock Eastern game draws better ratings than a 1 o'clock Eastern game. It's always been that way, and it's the reason why the NFL now plays its playoff games in the divisional round on at a later hour, which you can learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner. So this Jets-Patriots game was going to be at 4 o'clock Eastern. And that posed an absolutely massive problem for the team that played right across the street from the Jets, as in the New Jersey Nets. The Nets play their games at Brendan Byrne Arena, which is located in the same exact complex as Giants Stadium. You can see in this photo how close the 2 venues were to each other. They basically share the same parking structure. You were going to have a sold-out crowd at Giants Stadium watching the playoff game, and then you were going to have the New Jersey Nets playing at 7:30 in front of over 10,000 fans? How on earth were you going to have the parking for that? Plus, even if you did have the parking for all those fans, which you don't, seeing as there's enough space for roughly 25,000 cars, you had people coming in for the Nets game at the same time that this Jets game right here was ending, meaning that it would be an absolute traffic nightmare for a complex that, if you've ever been to it, is already nothing short of a traffic nightmare to get to. In other words, playing the Nets game at 7:30, roughly 15 minutes after the Jets game was done, would be a hassle and would be nearly impossible to pull off. You need time to empty out the lots. And with that in mind, the NBA didn't have a whole lot of options. You couldn't really move the game to an earlier window, seeing as the Nets' opponent, the Washington Bullets, was playing on Friday. So that wouldn't be fair to them to have to play almost immediately after getting in Jersey as part of the second game of a back-to-back. You play Friday night, and then you travel, and you're in Jersey Saturday morning, and then you play a game a few hours later? Yeah, that's not happening. You couldn't move the game to Sunday because you run into the same problem playing it in the afternoon against the New York Giants. It's the same issue, but with a different team. So the NBA decided that the best solution would be to play the game between the Nets and the Bullets way after the Jets game was done, playing the game at the ungodly hour of 9:40 Eastern Time. Yep, a 9:40 Eastern start. For those who don't know, that is absurdly late for an NBA game. Most games on the East Coast are not starting past 8 o'clock, and the absolute latest will be some NBA Finals games that used to start at 9:10. For a game to start at 9:40, meaning it's guaranteed that the game will end past midnight, is really freaking late for a basketball game. However, the NBA's hands were tied. Because this game right here had to go on at the hour that it had to, the NBA was playing second fiddle to the NFL once again. The Nets game had to be moved. It was as simple as that. Said Les Unger, the publicist for the New Jersey Sports and Exposition Authority, whenever there's a football game, the whole parking lot fills up. We normally schedule no other event when we have a football game. But when we got the NFL schedule back in April, this Saturday was an off day. And as Robert Molche, the chief officer for the Meadowlands Complex, said on this, we're in an extraordinary situation. The Giants and Jets are both home hosts in the NFL Championship playoffs this weekend. The Giants will play on Sunday at 1 o'clock. However, previous NBC commitments dictate that the Jets game be played on Saturday at 4 o'clock. Therefore, we've been forced to make several scheduling changes on Saturday at our facilities. We dearly value the comfort of our patrons at all these facilities. We have an extraordinary set of circumstances here. We're making these scheduling changes to avoid conflicts and traffic problems. And it's not like you can blame the NBA for not foreseeing this issue. This is not a situation where the NBA should have seen this coming and was ill-prepared, a la what happened in 1957 with CBS, in an entirely foreseeable issue between the Chicago Cardinals and the Pittsburgh Steelers, which you can learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner. Literally, the only way something like this could have happened was if the New York Jets got the number 4 seed and the New York Giants got the number 4 seed, and the television contracts dictated that one game had to take place later in the day on Saturday. Any other combination, and this is a non-issue. Any other scenario with television, and this is a non-issue. This was a 1 in 100,000 chance, and it just so happened to be that one. It just so happened that the NBA got the short end of the stick here as a result of this, because the NFL was going to win out 100 times out of 100. As for how the game went, that caused all this commotion in the first place, as you can probably tell from these highlights, everything about this game was ugly with a capital U for the Jets, as the first ever playoff game at Giants Stadium was a 26-14 loss for the home team, featuring a sequence in the third quarter where the Patriots scored 10 points in 10 seconds and opened up the floodgates. The Patriots were absolutely dominant on this day. They won the turnover margin by 4, with the Pats never turning the ball over and forcing 4 turnovers themselves. They held the Jets to just 58 yards rushing on under 3 yards a carry. They played incredibly smart football, only committing 1 penalty. And the defensive line for the Pats was nothing short of dominant, forcing a whopping 5 sacks and continually driving the Jets backwards on each possession. After the Jets took a 7-3 lead, the Patriots scored 20 straight points and never looked back. It was a convincing win for the Patriots and what will be the start of a miracle run to represent the AFC at Super Bowl 20, with the team eventually making it to their first Super Bowl in franchise history in a game that you can learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner. And let's just say it was the first of many appearances for the Patriots in the Super Bowl. As for how the other games went after the game between these two teams behind me right here, well, it was a bit of a mixed bag. Later that night, the New Jersey Nets took on the Washington Bullets. And if you were a Nets fan who was upset about the late start time and was upset about the fact that the New York Jets just lost, you were not going to be too happy with the result of that game, because the Nets ended up losing to the Bullets by a final score of 98-93, with the Nets blowing a fourth quarter lead in the process. However, on the flip side, on Sunday, the New York Giants played their game against the San Francisco 49ers at Giants Stadium. And the Giants had way better luck than the Jets did, as the Giants won their game by a final score of 17-3 to advance to the divisional round of the playoffs before losing to the Chicago Bears. So even though the Jets played the first playoff game at Giants Stadium, the Giants were the first of the two home teams there to win a playoff game at the venue. We've known it for a while now, and I don't think it's changing anytime soon. The NFL is king. Especially when it comes to the NFL against the NBA, the NFL is going to win every single time. And the 1985 wildcard round was a prime example of that, when the New Jersey Nets were merely an afterthought despite having a game already booked well in advance. You knew that this game right here was going to take priority, and that the Nets never stood a chance, and that they would have to accommodate the NFL to make it work. Because on this day in 1985, even though the Jets may not have been flying high on the field, the NFL was flying high above the NBA.
Be sure to like and subscribe if you have not done so already, as it helps the channel out a lot, and check out my other channels, JG8 for the history of college football, JG7 for the history of baseball, and JG9 News, where we talk about all things happening in the NFL. Join me every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, where we'll play live NFL trivia for cash prizes. And make sure to join me live, as we're on stream just about every single day. And thanks to all our Patreon members and our YouTube members for helping out the channel. See how you become a member and show your support financially in the description down below.